The challenges confronting mankind are numerous, be it political or economic, social or environmental. Most of today's human challenges are not unique to one country or continent. Hello and welcome to African Integration, our quarter-hour program that looks at various efforts geared towards the integration of Africa. In this week's edition, our focus is on the African Regional Centers of Expertise, RCE, and the Regional Continental Meeting of the RCE. The program is reaching you from the Abuja studios of Voice of Nigeria. Stay tuned for details. I am Bimbo Bakari. The African Regional Center of Expertise RCE Continental Meeting was organized recently in Abuja, Nigeria's capital city. It was the third time the RCE was holding its continental get-together. The Abuja Continental Meeting was particularly significant because it marked the beginning of the active involvement of policymakers in the activities of the RCE in Nigeria and in Africa as a whole. Speaking during the RCE meeting in Abuja, the Executive Governor of Niger State, North Central Nigeria, Dr. Babangida Aliyu, praised the RCE initiative while affirming Niger State government's commitment to the ideals of the RCE.
The RCE network, by putting the resources of different development actors, provides an excellent opportunity to address sustainability issues and at the same time strengthen the African resilience in the context of an increasingly challenging global environment. The activities of African RCEs, from the available record, ranges from organizing environmental learning workshops for educators to enable universities connect with the people and society. They are, however, faced with many challenges, such as poor network governance system and inadequate funding for collaborative educational projects in their quest to involve communities and facilitate a network approach to achieve sustainable development. It is for this reason that I wish to use this opportunity to assure you that Niger State government remains committed to the success of the RCE initiative with a view to making RCE MENA an example for the country and indeed the continent.
The African Regional Center of Expertise, RCE, is driven by the desire to promote greater dialogue and co-engagement between the academia, hitherto an isolated institution, and the larger society. Professor Rob O'Donoghue of Rhodes University, South Africa, was a guest speaker at the RCE Continental Meeting in Abuja.
The RCE came about around the decade of Education for Sustainable Development, and the idea was to provide a platform for sustainable development where there's much more of an equalizing relationship between the expert and between the people who are living the problem. So there are two kinds of expertise there. The expertise that people get from experiencing the problems in an area, and the expertise that people get by studying the problem at a university. And the idea was to bring those two together so that an RCE is a place where people with different expertise meet and they co-engage, they begin to work together on the solutions of the problems as experienced and as studied.
The RCE is a United Nations initiative and was founded on the idea of mutual support for collective benefits. This idea takes its origin from Ubuntu, a Southern African philosophy that emphasizes humanity towards others, or the belief in a universal bond of sharing that connects all humanity. Professor O'Donoghue explains.
The RCEs, as part of a global network, developed and approved through the Ubuntu Commission. It's a United Nations initiative from the United Nations University in Tokyo. And it came about through the Johannesburg World Summit and the promoting of this decade of education for sustainable development. And then it was the Japanese government that partnered with other governments and they said we need to support this, and the United Nations University took up the approval and registration process, and now there are many RCEs around the world, and they're very diverse, very different, but they've been providing platforms for communities and states and municipalities and academics to pool resources and ideas. And the decade comes to an end after 10 years in 2014.
Expertise, co-engagement and sustainable development are all terms strongly associated with the RCE. The idea of the RCE is indeed a noble and laudable one. So what led to the founding of the RCEs? Ali Bukar Ahmad is the RCE coordinator of Kano, northwestern Nigeria, as well as the coordinator of the West African RCE Forum.
Regional Center of Expertise is an innovation by United Nations, saying that education has failed in sensitizing people in sustainable development. So United Nations felt that education must be fully involved. Not just formal education, but informal and non-formal education, which all involve all forms of knowledge to sensitize people on sustainable development. Hence, the RCEs. RCE, it's an abstract community of practice. It's that are synergized together to deliver what they call education for sustainable development. So you see, the intention of United Nations University is to create what is called the global learning space, so that every university that is a member of RCE can link up, collaborate and partnership with another RCE in the area of research, in the area of development, students exchange, teacher exchange and the rest.
The third African Regional Center of Expertise RCE meeting brought together experts and non-experts from various African universities and RCE centers across the continent. This coming together of experts created a forum for the integration of ideas. Dr. Abel Atiti is a research fellow at the United Nations University Institute of Advanced Studies. He x-rays the core goals of the RCE as well as the focus of the third continental meeting of the RCE.
The main idea is to use them to promote networking and multi-stakeholder engagement in ESD, so education for sustainable development, to encourage local initiatives. But basically, centers come together and they, within a defined geographical region, identify issues, sustainable development issues to address through collaborative activities. And then normally they identify also joint projects to address, which also touch on various issues. But for this particular meeting, we are focusing on community engaged research and mainly involving universities and local communities.
As African Regional Centers of Expertise strive to assess and prefer solutions to the various sustainable development challenges of today, they also aim at raising the living standards of the people. Professor Shima Gio is the acting provost of the College of Health Sciences, Benue State University, North Central Nigeria.
We still have this huge population of disadvantaged people. How are we going to change their standard of living? How are we going to change their lives through appropriate educational application? So this is where the universities will help. We'll look at those and say, well, this is the way to do it here. Now, the RCEs will investigate what are the needs of the community and how can they be tackled through education, through appropriate education, so that their activities will be very much in register with the needs of the community, and the impact is going to be great.
Without a doubt, integration has the capacity to turn around the fortunes of the continent in diverse ways. Apart from being a platform for multi-stakeholder engagement in education for sustainable development, the RCE is also a driver of integration. Dr. Saul Shava of the University of South Africa was a delegate at the RCE Continental meeting. He examines the integration potentials within the framework of the RCE.
To start off with, when you look at an RCE bringing about that bridge or that interface between higher education and communities and government departments, that in itself is an integration that was to a large extent non-existent, because universities have to a large extent existed as islands away from communities. So that's the first level of integration that we can actually talk to. When we have meetings that bring together RCEs like we have right now, from different contexts, learning and sharing together, we are also bringing that integration within the African context as what is actually happening within this particular conference that is existing now. And from the experiences that we are sharing and bringing together, and also exposing them to the broader community, international global community, we are also looking at what African innovations are actually existent and how those can also be shared beyond.
And citing the level of success of RCEs, Dr. Shava says,
if you look at education for sustainable development, you are looking at a lifelong activity. So in terms of success, you are looking at what has been achieved and what has actually been done. The cases that are coming through, the issues that the different RCs are actually working on, are in themselves actually success. But that success is long-term success, because you are saying if you have done A, B, C, and D, what next? Because for an RC to exist, it has to continue the community engagement, it has to continue that research, and it has to continue the beneficiation that actually comes from the research and the engagement to the community context. So you should look at it from both what the successes of the activities that are actually being undertaken now to activities that can be planned in the near future or the future beyond.
The increasingly complex nature of sustainable development challenges calls for the adoption of new strategies in tackling them, and by seeking co-engagement with all stakeholders, networking, researching, and imbibing education for sustainable development (ESD), the RCE is indeed headed in the right direction. And that is how we end this week's edition of African Integration, which focused on the African Regional Centers of Expertise (RCE) and the third continental meeting of the RCE. If you have any comment or observation on the program, contact the producer, African Integration, Voice of Nigeria, PMB 40003 Falomo Ikoyi, Lagos, Nigeria. You can also reach us on our email, englishvon@yahoo.com. The program was produced by Godwin Taho. My studio manager has been Jacob Tairumu, while I am Bimbo Bakari. The program came to you from the Abuja studios of Voice of Nigeria. Bye for now.